Hello guys, in typical Laravel CRUD controllers, resource controllers, there's always an edit button. But what if there are multiple edit and update actions depending on which columns do you want to update? For example, you may edit the full CRUD with a few fields, then you may edit the assigned to the person, just updating the drop-down button of a person, and also you may update completed, yes or no, which would be just toggle in the table, which could be an icon, but in this case it's yes or no. So should that all be in the update method of the controller, or what are other options? In this video I will show you at least 3 different options I came up with. And this comes from the comments on YouTube. On one of my previous videos about the CRUD, this comment was raised with this specific example, like task status column is completed column, so should it be the same update method? And not only that, the second comment, kind of like a follow-up, was about permissions. So what if some users may update only certain columns while admins have the permissions to update everything? So in which place to check the permissions then? And in my reply to that comment, I promised a follow-up, and here we go. Let's take a look at the code. So here's the task controller with update method, which uses form request and route model binding. But in the blade, we have this. So the first option is to not change anything in the controller, but rely on if statements in the blade and in the form request class. Let me show you. So first, column for editing the people can with specific permission name, gate name in this case, which leads to the link of tasks edit with assignment equals 1 as a parameter. Then similarly, change completion status, which leads to task update, but with another hidden parameter of status equals 1, which means that update method should be called with status 1, which will check somewhere on the backend. And then the third option, tasks edit, just a regular tasks edit with route model binding without any parameters. Now in the controller, as I said, we don't change anything in the edit or update, and the whole magic is in the blade and form request. So if we go to task edit, we have this. If request has assignment, then we have that hidden field passed to the update as well. And if we don't have assignment, we show the full form with name and description and whatever else other fields. But if we do have assignment, it could be actually if else, but maybe this is more readable. We show only the select for assigning user ID. And nothing really changed here in the blade. Now in the controller, as I said, the magic is in the form request. Let me demonstrate. But first, actually, I will emphasize that request validated is the actual array of validated parameters that are returned from form request. So whatever that form request returns will be actually updated in the database. And down below, we have the list of rules. And here we have if statements. So if we have the status field, which is in the hidden parameter, remember, then we return just is completed. Nothing else will be updated in the database because, again, it uses request validated, in this case with only one column is completed. Similarly, we validate the user ID and return only user ID in request validated if we have assignment as a hidden parameter. Otherwise, if it's a regular form, we return all the usual array with rules and keys, and only those would be updated. And also you saw above that we repeat the same logic with authorize. And this is where the gates are checked on the back end. So it's not only on the front end that is shown or not shown, but also if we have status, then we check whether that user can change completion status. And similarly, assignment is defined by the gate called assign people. And we have this route task, so we also check whether that specific task can be modified by the logged in user. So this is option number 1. Same controller, if statements in blade, and the logic in the form request. Option number 2 is to have separate controllers for editing the user or editing the completion status for the task. And here we have separate routes. So as you can see, the link is to the tasks edit user route, and then change completion status leads to tasks update completion route. And in the routes web PHP, in addition to the typical resource controller, now we have these three routes. In the case of editing the user, we have get and put routes separately, so we have the form. In case of save task completion controller, we have only update method there. But in all cases, all those three controllers are invocable controllers with single action, so only one method inside. The method is called invoke, and this is where we handle everything related to is completed. We may or may not use form requests. We save the task and redirect back with success message. Similarly, in the edit task user controller, we show the form, and in the save task user controller, we update the user ID. And then we don't need any if statements in the blade because edit task user leads to tasks edit user, separate blade file with the form of just assigned to user, so no if statements here. And the main edit blade only has the form with the update fields with name and description, and that's it. So basically we separate everything to its own controllers, routes, and blade files. And actually both can work. This is your personal preference, whether you want to have that in one controller or in separate ones. And it also may depend on the amount of separate fields, different logic, so on the amount of complexity with those if statements. I admit this example is pretty simplified with only a few fields. In reality, your examples may be much more complex. But that is not all in this video. The third option, or kind of sub-option of the second one, is to have invoke controller for saving the task. Because it's just the update method, it could actually even be called update instead of using invocable controller. But for the task, we do have the form and the update method, so we can make it in one controller, edit and update, instead of having invocable controller. This looks more like familiar resource controllers, CRUD controllers, but with just two methods. So if you prefer as much as possible to stick to the route resources and CRUDdy design for the controller methods, then that may be your option. And here, by the way, I will mention a talk, very old talk by Adam Wadden, the OG of Laravel community, now Tailwind creator. Back in 2017, so 8 years ago almost, he shared a talk at Laracon called CRUDdy by Design, which went pretty viral over the years and stayed pretty relevant until now. In 2022, I made a summary post of those points with my own opinion, so I will share that article in the description below. You may read more and we can discuss in the comments whether you agree with that philosophy of CRUDdy by design, which basically means everything should be a CRUD as much as possible. But getting back to our example, basically the question of the crossroad is this. Do you prefer one controller with if statements in the blade and in the form request, or you prefer separate controllers for separate update forms or actions depending on columns updated in the database? Let's discuss in the comments below. That's it for this time, and see you guys in other videos.